family? It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to the War on Gaza report. Here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we cover Israel's ongoing war in Gaza, doing what mainstream media refuses to do, doing what corporate outlets cannot do, and that is to give you honest, clear, hard-hitting, fact-based assessments and reporting of what's going on in the Gaza Strip since October 7th, when Israel retaliated in response to Hamas's October 7th attack. Israel launched a disproportionate, indiscriminate, and illegal war, a genocide on the Palestinian people. So we call it the War on Gaza report because it's not about a war in Gaza. It's a war on Gaza. And every single day we want to make sure when we have the ability that we cover that ongoing war on Gaza. So that's what we're doing here today on the channel, as we always do. I want to thank the people who have been watching us since day one. We are now, sadly, on day 355. Day 355 of Israel's war on Gaza. I can't imagine that many people a year ago thought that we were 10 days away from October 7th, that we were 12 days away from Hamas and affiliate organizations having the capacity to infiltrate and breach Israeli unestablished borders, and see the level of destruction that we saw. 1,139 people killed, hundreds more kidnapped. But the thing that was, and it remains, the most shocking, the most awe-inspiring in the worst way possible, the most devastating, the most disturbing, the most sickening, is the fact that Israel responded in a way that was wildly disproportionate, wildly indiscriminate. One that has made no distinction between civilians and combatants, one that has caused the death of so many children, the one that has destroyed the built environment, one that has devastated schools, one that has shut down the school system, one that has basically made an already unlivable set of conditions even less livable. This is disturbing. And I want to be very clear. Over the last 9 days, we've had the ability to really launch the War on Lebanon report. And please don't think we're not going to do that. But for now, I'm going to sort of combine my commentary so that we can effectively talk about both, because the war on Gaza doesn't seem to be ending, and the war on Lebanon does not seem to be yielding or ceasing either. I'm going to be brief tonight for the reasons that I've already told you on other programs, which is that I'm sick. But I've made a commitment to doing this, and we're going to do this as long as we can. So I'm going to move quickly, but please don't take that as a lack of interest. Take it. Please understand that I'm just not strong right now. But we're going to begin where we always begin, which is the numbers. As of now, as of today, at least 41,495 people. I want to say that number again. 41,495 people have been killed, and 96,006 have been wounded in Israel's war on Gaza. 41,495 people. Now that number to some is intimidating. It's so big it doesn't seem real. Well, please understand that number, however big you may believe that it is actually a conservative number. There are not a mere 41,495 people dead in Gaza since October 7th. 10 to 20,000 more lay under the rubble. 10 to 20,000 more lay under the rubble. And then when you add the people who may not have been directly killed by Israel, but have been killed by Israel's violence, for example, you shoot somebody, that's a direct strike. You blow up a building, the building collapses, that's a direct strike. But then there are things that are sort of secondary. Basically, if Israel were not at war in Gaza, these people would still be alive, right? The sort of indirect causes or the secondary level causes. The Lancet study or the Lancet report sort of broke this down and said that could raise the number of deaths to 4 times what the Gazan Health Ministry is saying. That would mean that instead of 60,000 right now, we'd be looking at a few 100,000, 200,000 to 300,000. And that at some point that number could get even higher. I'll just say that. So what we see on the ground is genocidal, not purely by number, right? Because it's not about raw numbers. It's also about the intent. It's about the effect, the impact. It's also about what wasn't done, what efforts were made to stop this. All of it is part of the equation. So I just want to be clear why we use those numbers and why those numbers are not, why we use those numbers and why those numbers are not only not elevated, they're actually quite conservative. Anyway, since we're beginning with numbers, it's important that we start in Lebanon right now. Israeli attacks killed 72 people across Lebanon on Wednesday, today. Of course, in Lebanon, it's already 6:30 a.m. But on Thursday, but throughout the day, today, Wednesday, 72 people killed. That brings the death toll from Israeli bombings in Lebanon to 620. That's according to the to Lebanon's Ministry of Health. Now, again, the West will say, "How do we trust it?" Israel will say, "You can't believe the Lebanon Ministry of Health." There's no evidence that Lebanon's Ministry of Health is inaccurate with death tolls, just like there's no evidence that the Gazan Health Ministry is inaccurate. When you look at history, past wars, quote unquote, when you look at international numbers, when you look at third-party data, they all support the fact that the deaths in Gaza are accurate and the deaths in Lebanon are accurate. And 620 already is a disturbing number. It's a number that's still not the same pace as Gaza, but it's still a ridiculously high number. And it's one that has to stop. But it's not just death. We've already talked about the mass displacement in Gaza. We have to think about the mass displacement in Lebanon as well. As of now, Israel's massive bombing campaign has already displaced 500,000 people. That's according to the foreign minister of Lebanon. I need to see some hard data on that to know the exact number or to confirm the exact number, but 500,000 people displaced. That number is faster and even more aggressive than what we saw in Palestine, in Gaza in particular. You're talking about 500,000 people who are unhoused, who are vulnerable, who've been rendered unsafe by military strikes. This is unfortunately the same playbook as Gaza. Now, according to France's foreign minister, a proposal is in place for a 21-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. Now, France's foreign minister told this to the UN Security Council. The UN Security Council, if they are smart, will be skeptical. They should be skeptical because the United States, and I'll get to that in a moment, has talked about a similar deal with with Hamas and Israel. They've talked about it being brokered through Qatar and Egypt. And yet nothing comes of these deals. Now, when it comes to Israel in particular, as I've said many times, Benjamin Netanyahu has every professional and personal motivation to stay at war. He has no motivation or incentive to end war, because once war is over, he will no longer be prime minister. You can just about guarantee that. There certainly will be elections sooner than later. And if he's found, here's the thing, he's going to stay in office, or he's going to And he's going to stay at war. He's going to stay at war, or he's going to be out of office. And if he's out of office, he's going to be in jail. There's a really good chance of that. So this is the context. Talking about this ceasefire order, though, Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia have also made their own call. They've issued a joint call with the United States, Canada, Australia, and Japan, along with some EU nations, for a 21-day temporary ceasefire in Lebanon. In this joint statement, which was released recently, and when I say recently, I mean like 30 minutes ago, it was also signed by the European Union, France, Germany, Italy. The signatories say, quote, "The situation between Lebanon and Israel since October 8th, 2023 is intolerable and presents an unacceptable risk of a broader regional escalation." People don't want regional war. They don't want World War II. It's time to conclude a diplomatic settlement that enables civilians on both sides of the border to return to their homes in safety. Thus, we call for an immediate 21-day ceasefire across the Lebanon-Israel border to provide space for diplomacy towards the conclusion of a diplomatic settlement consistent with UN SCR 1701 and the implementation of UNSCR 2735 regarding a ceasefire in Gaza. We call on all parties, including the governments of Israel and Lebanon, to endorse the temporary ceasefire immediately. We are then prepared to fully support all diplomatic efforts to conclude an agreement between Lebanon and Israel within this period, building on efforts over the last months that ends this crisis together. Yeah, okay. Again, everybody's not invested in peace. Some people are invested in advancing a narrative and protecting their own positions. All right, family. I can't do much more. I'm not feeling great, so I'm going to pause there. But there are some other stories to think and talk about, including the 4 people questioned in Taiwan over exploding pagers in Lebanon. The intel on that is actually quite helpful for thinking about what this all means. Yeah, so what I want to do, actually, let me just say one more thing, because I don't want to ignore some of the other deadly strikes. At least one person has been killed after Israeli fighter jets bombed the Caleb, excuse me, the Caleb bombed the Caleb family home in the center of Khan Yunis city in southern Gaza. That's according to Wafa News. Several more people were wounded and transferred to the Nasser medical complex. Wafa also reports the Israeli military has bombed a house in the customs police area east of Khan Yunis, resulting in deaths and injuries without specifying how many. In the Jabalia refugee camp in northern Gaza, the Israeli military has bombed a home on El Yafawiya Street, killing at least 1 person and injuring 9 more. Several people were also injured when Israeli forces bombed the As-Sahar family home, the As-Sahar family home in Jabalia town. Much more on that coming up soon. Wafa and Al Jazeera will have info on that. We'll pause there. I appreciate y'all so much. I'm going to try and come back tomorrow with more. If not tomorrow, the next day. I need to rest again, but I wanted to let y'all know that I love you and that I appreciate you. And thank you for all the work that you're doing out in the world to keep the Palestinian struggle for liberation active, to keep the Lebanese struggle for liberation and self-determination active. And that goes for all oppressed people around the world. We'll talk soon. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.